Hey everybody! I'm so happy to be back doing another Ask Alex for you. This one is sort of quick, sort of not quick. We'll see. We'll see how it works out. But I thought this month was a great month to dive back into video because the newsletters are already very long and text heavy. So hopefully I'll get back in the habit of doing more videos if that's something you guys like. Let me know if you have any questions. You can always find me on Instagram, Twitter, you name it. You know where to find me. But anyway, I thought today I would cover a topic that inevitably comes up this time of year, every year. And that question has to do with how I wrote and sold a novel when I was still in college. I guess because it's back to school time, people are thinking about it a little bit more. I think this advice somewhat applies to both high school and college, so I hope it comes in useful. Hopefully it's not too no duh, but we'll see. So basically, if you don't know, my history with this is that when I was a freshman in college, I decided I wanted to try to write my first novel, and I participated in NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, that year. And I wrote 50,000 words of a novel that, blessedly, will never see the light of day because it was like me word vomiting every trope, every cliche that you could possibly imagine into this fantasy YA book. And another thing I want to emphasize really quickly, before I forget, is that this was like a very different era of YA that I was writing in at that time. It was like Twilight had just sort of come out. It wasn't really what it is today. There wasn't a ton of information online in terms of querying and the whole publication process, but there was more than there had been, so I definitely benefited from that. But anyway, back to the main point. I had always been a writer, like from the time I was in elementary school. I loved it, always wanted to tell stories. In middle school and in high school, I wrote a ton of fan fiction, like a metric ton of fan fiction. And so I was already in the habit of writing every week or like a little bit every day. And so I was like, you know what? I kind of want to prove to my parents I don't have to go to law school to have a career. So I'm going to try to sell a book before I graduate. So there's some pros and cons to this mentality. I'm going to kind of work through it a little bit. So I hope this doesn't seem too negative. In the past, I wrote a LiveJournal article about this like years ago that became somewhat controversial because a lot of people disagreed with me. So I want to emphasize that I'm talking about my own personal experience here. And if you were to ask, any other author today who also was writing very seriously in college with publication in mind, they would probably give you a completely different answer, and that's okay too. So, okay, so I have like 7 or 8 tips. I think 7 is what I've settled on. All right, so my first tip, set a goal. For me, that goal was effing crazy. It was like, I want to publish a book by the time I'm a senior in college because I'm trying to prove a point, and also I know that's what I want to do with my life, so full steam ahead. And in terms of that, very quickly, you have to figure out what your own personal balance is between being in college and having a social life and having fun and taking care of all of your coursework and your course load, and also finding time to write to make that goal. So setting smaller goals in terms of like how much writing you want to accomplish is really important, but in like having that bigger goal, I'm a very goal-driven person, and so I need that goal. If that's too much pressure for you, don't set a goal that big. Just set little micro goals of I want to write 500 words a week, that kind of thing. And that will remove a lot of the pressure, which inevitably leads to a lot of writing block. So, but my personal balance, and this is the negative part I kind of warned you about at the beginning. In retrospect, looking back, I wish I had been more invested in my college experience than I was in wanting to be published. And I think it's very easy to fall into the trap of being so committed and so hungry for that success or for that milestone that it's something, how do I want to put this? You take for granted that you see your friends and that you have this experience because it's happening to you, and you're like, oh, I can just see my friend Ashley at breakfast tomorrow. Like, I don't need to go out and hang out with her tonight. Well, once you graduate, it's over. Like, that's it. And you don't necessarily end up in all the same cities as your friends. You kind of scatter to the winds a little bit. So just be very careful that if you ever feel like you're not seeing your friends, or if you feel like you never have time for writing because you're always with your friends, like, there is a balance. It's different for every person. Don't put pressure on yourself either way. Just figure out what makes you happiest, because you're there to learn, you're there to get your degree, you're also there to become the best possible version of yourself. So just find what works for you. Don't let anyone tell you that's not the right way, because it's so individual for every person. So tip 2, discipline and routine. These are the not fun tip, but I was lucky because of my fan fiction background. I had a lot of discipline built in where I could sit down and I could work and I could write for a solid 4 hours and be done and hit my goal and then kind of continue on with life. But discipline in this instance, in college or in high school, also means having the discipline to do your actual assignments before you get to the fun writing part. It's, having the discipline to make those academic assignments before you have fun, basically. Just repeated myself. But you know what I mean? You can't blow off your schoolwork to write, is what I'm essentially getting at. So discipline is greatly helped by having a routine. And I had a really strong routine when I was in college. Initially, when I first started writing after NaNoWriMo, I committed like every Friday night that was my writing time. I would go to the Barrett Computer Lab, Barrett Computer Lab was the dorm the dorm exists, but the computer lab attached to it. It's now a lounge. Like, broke my heart when I went back for homecoming and it was gone. But anyway, so I would go over there, and there were usually, because it was a Friday night, it was pretty much deserted, and I would have that whole room to myself and would work and listen to music and just get it all out, turn my phone off. And then once I sold a book, or actually once I had an agent, my junior year of college, I got an agent my 21st birthday, which is crazy and like a weird coincidence, but I got an agent for my second book, Brightly Woven, and I worked with my editor for like 7 or 8 months before we ever submitted it to a publishing house. So every morning, my routine became wake up at 6. My alarm at the time was Arcade Fire's to keep the car running, that opening riff that's so beautiful. Now I hear it and it's like a Pavlovian response, and I'm like, no, oh my god, I don't want to get up, it's too early, I'm so tired. Anyway, so I would get up, get over to the Barrett Computer Lab again by 7. I would beat the custodial staff there. I would buy myself breakfast from the vending machine, a bottle of Coca-Cola, Cheez-Its, and then fruit snacks if I felt like I needed some variety. And I would just work, and I would work until I had class at 10 or 11, depending on the day. And that's how I somehow managed, because, by the way, I was a history and English double major, so I had a ton of reading and a ton of writing. It's doable. You can do it. I believe in you. If you have a very intensive workload, there is still room for writing. You just kind of have to adjust the goal, as we were talking about earlier. So that was my routine, and then my routine got shot to smithereens once I actually sold the book, and I then had to make deadlines that unfortunately overlapped with my second semester senior year and all of my finals and all of my final papers. So basically everyone thought I graduated a semester early because no one ever saw me. It was that creature that haunted Swim Library, or, ate every single meal in my room so I could also work and not be distracted. So again, some pitfalls. We'll get back to that in a minute. But number three tip, take advantage of the flexible schedule that you have in college in terms of all of those like weird little hours where like you're tempted to nap and you have this weird amount of time between classes. Like, that's great for like sitting down outside on a bench or like sitting outside of your next class and just like jotting down notes in a notebook or in your phone. Take advantage of that once you're, in the real world and you have a 9 to 5. That does not really exist except for your lunch hour. All right, number 4 tip. This is kind of a do as I say, not as I did, sort of. I think it's really important to find critique partners when you're first starting out, especially. And even now, I'm so grateful that I have people who will read my material and give me feedback. But when you're first figuring out your voice and your style of writing, you do need some criticism coming towards you to help you find your strengths, or like honor your strengths, and help you kind of address your weaknesses as a writer. And everyone has them. It's not anything to like be ashamed of. Everyone has their weaknesses. For me, I cannot write a beginning of a book to save my life without going through like 15 or 20 different attempts. So in certain instances, that means taking creative writing classes or finding an existing creative writing group or creating one yourself. Now, the caveat here is that it is also really important during this time period to figure out how to filter criticism. And so, everyone, especially in writing classes, everybody has their own agenda when they're giving feedback on other people's work. So like sometimes they're just like being a-holes, and it's inevitable. There's a lot of personalities involved. But you know what I mean? Like, the thing you figure out very quickly, and I was lucky because I learned this when I was writing fan fiction, is that you will always get criticism that is really just someone's personal opinion and it's their personal taste, that they didn't like something because it's not to their taste. That is very different than getting actual like writing technique or character development criticism. So you'll figure out pretty quickly, but that's an important skill to kind of master when you're first starting out and when you're in college. And I also think that will really help you with your other schoolwork too. Okay. Tip number 5. This is the thing I miss most about college. Study many different things. Take as many different classes as you want. Investigate things you like, areas of history or certain areas of literature that you are not that familiar with. Meet as many people as you can. Join clubs. Take advantage of special collections in your library. You're in a really unique position to basically open up your worldview, and that only ever helps your writing. So really take advantage of being a sponge. Let all of that like good, interesting information and help you form your view of the world and help you form your point of view when it comes to writing. Okay, tip number 6. Let's see, how do I want to put this? When I was first figuring out how to query, there really were only a couple websites to help, and there were a couple, thank goodness, agent blogs that kind of would dissect query letters. Part of wanting to be published while you're in school is doing the work of researching how that actually works. It's, going through and learning about the querying process. It's going through and making lists of the different agents you think would be good fits for your work. So basically what I'm trying to get at here is you have to remember that if you're committing to this and you really want to sell a book, it is a profession. It is a professional industry that you are getting into. You have to sign contracts. You have to honor those contracts. There are consequences if you don't meet the terms of those contracts. So be sure that you are ready to commit to having that professional gig. And that's really kind of what happened when Brightly Woven sold. I was like, oh, you scheduled my book and it's coming out and this is so amazing. I'm so excited, but oh, I'm contractually obligated to meet all of these deadlines and I'm not going to be able to see my friends for the second semester of senior year. So that's just something to keep in mind. Do your research, be a professional, no matter how young you are. I found age didn't help or hinder me when I was querying. Sometimes, agents use that as a selling point, or publishing houses are like, this person's only 22, but I don't know, that wasn't the case with me. And actually that kind of ties into the last point I wanted to make, which is there is no expiration date on success when it comes to writing or publishing a book. I wish I could go back and pat young Alex's head and be like, your world will not end if you do not sell a book while you're still in college or before college. That is it's not a crazy dream. It is definitely a really hard dream. It involves a lot of hard work. It's something that many people will tell you is not realistic. It can be realistic as long as you're willing to put said hard work into it. But don't beat yourself up over the fact that you have not hit those goals. People publish at various points in their lives. I happen to get in very early. I think that's somewhat related to the fact that, and a very casual survey of my friends who sold their first books in their early to mid-20s kind of confirms this, but we all started writing in some capacity, even if it was just fan fiction, when we were in middle school. So there is some lead time to help develop that craft. But if you're really just starting out, it's okay if it takes you 5, 10, 15, 20 years to sell a book. The important thing, and I guess this is sort of tip 8, but really just tip in general, don't give up. This is one of the most discouraging industries to try to get into and to eventually be in, because as worthwhile it is to write books, you also, and to share your stories and to enter into people's homes that way and have your story impact someone's life, you also face a ton of rejection and you sort of become dead into it after a while. Not always, but you just have to understand that you cannot control certain things and you will face rejection at all stages of your career. You will be rejected by literary agents, you will be rejected by editors at publishing houses, you will be rejected by readers who don't like your work. So don't give up. That is the one thing that all writers have in common. All authors who are out there with published work, they did not give up, even in the face of feeling like they can't do it or not making certain goals that they've set for themselves. Don't give up. I believe in you. You can do it. Take college or high school to really find out what you want to say as a writer, to develop your craft, to study as many things as possible, and to create these wonderful worlds that we will eventually get to read when they are good and ready. So, yeah, I guess guess that's it. Although I want to like very quickly address another question that I get all the time that's sort of tangentially related to this, which is, what do you have to major in, or do you have to major in English to be an author? The truth is, you can major in whatever you want. My recommendation is always to major in something that you feel passionate about, because it will show in your work and it'll show in your career trajectory. And I majored in history and English, like I said, but I've had friends who majored in science, international relations, political science, French, everything. Find something that you love and just try to incorporate as many different types of courses on the periphery as you possibly can. So, yeah, you do you. You set your goals, you create a routine for yourself, find people who will help you develop your and hone your skills as a writer, study many different things, do your research and be a professional, and then forgive yourself if something along the way doesn't go right, or pat yourself on the back if something does. So anyway, that was very rambly. I hope that somewhat helps or illustrates how somehow I managed to do this. Looking back on it, I still can't believe it happened, and I'm grateful for it every day. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below, shoot me a note on Twitter, Instagram, you guys know where to find me. So the next time we'll chat, I'll be at my new house. That's why we're filming in kind of like this weird random corner, because everywhere else it's like Box City. So yeah, we'll see you soon. Have a good one. Oh, and have a great first couple weeks back at school. Bye.